Hey guys, Dave with First Place Auto Parts. And we do a lot of tech stuff here because we work with a lot of carbureted cars. With carburetors, typically you have to do a lot of adjustments, but you've never probably thought of your spark plug as a potential tuning tool. And the reality is that spark plugs come in a lot of different types. And in today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about spark plug heat ranges. These little things, spark plugs, really they're instrumental in how your car starts, but also how they run. But did you know that a spark plug's other purpose is to draw heat away from the combustion process, which is typically ideally at 1500 degrees to keep a clean spark plug. Look, if you've made changes either to your induction system, or maybe you've changed something like a supercharger, or you've gone to a turbo, or maybe you're using nitrous oxide, then you need to know about heat range on spark plugs, because the right one can help your car run clean and burn efficiently for a long time, but the wrong one can cause disaster inside that combustion chamber. So today we're talking spark plug heat ranges, so you better understand which one's right for your application. Spark plug manufacturers, they make a lot of different types of spark plugs, and in today's video we're talking about the actual heat ranges. Now look, heat ranges for spark plugs are important. If you have a stock vehicle, particularly if it's fuel injected, in these modern cars, a new spark plug will run 100,000 miles with the iridium tips. But if you have a classic muscle car or truck that has a carburetor, or maybe you've made some modifications to that fuel delivery system, or you've pressurized that with a supercharger, turbocharger, or nitrous oxide, or you've added a couple different carburetors to this thing, you might need to play with your spark plug heat ranges. In my case, I know I had to with my 56 Chevrolet when I put a tunnel ram on it. Tunnel rams, they need a lot of fuel to make sure that fuel, because that fuel stays in suspension in those long runners. In my case, I had to go up actually one step hotter in my application to keep my spark plugs clean, especially at idle and cold start. What I found, I was starting to follow a lot of spark plugs, even with timing dialed in and the air-fuel ratio right. What I was doing is I was loading up my plugs. I needed to go up one step hotter on my spark plugs to correct that. And look, I can run a full season on a set of spark plugs and not have any issues. So if you made any modifications to your car, one of the things you may run into is you may have a lot more fuel going into that combustion chamber. And that combustion chamber, guys, when this little baby fires, is a violent place. So it can get over 1500 degrees in there. And the key function of a spark plug, beyond lighting that rich fuel mixture, is to dissipate heat from that combustion process. 1500 degrees, that's the optimal temperature for the nose of these spark plugs to stay clean. It burns off the carbon that accumulates them the combustion process. And if you go below that, what you start to get is carbon fouling. And you'll know that when the car starts to miss, or it runs very sluggishly, and it gets worse and worse the more you drive it. Once you fouled a spark plug, really you need to replace it. So if you made some modifications, we're going to talk today about plug heat ranges and how to identify the spark plug and why the changes what they do. And in this case right here, what we have is a cold spark plug. And the reason it's called a cold spark plug is that it has a very short porcelain insulator in here. The ground strap and the center electrode are short, and that allows the heat to travel that's created when this thing fires and the combustion process takes place. It allows the heat to dissipate to the threaded areas where it screws into your cylinder heads. So your colder plugs tend to dissipate heat faster, and they have a shorter center electrode. Look, other things that can affect heat ranges are what the material they're made out of and some other characteristics, but the big thing is how long this center electrode in this porcelain is. Hotter spark plugs, like the smaller one we have here, have a longer center electrode and porcelain piece, and what that does is that slows the dissipation of heat from the combustion process from reaching the threaded area and therefore dissipating the heat through the cylinder head. So hot spark plugs actually slow down the travel of heat, or the heat sink, from the porcelain in the center of the spark plug, where a cold spark plug has a shorter center electrode and a shorter porcelain center, and it speeds up the heat dissipation. So when you play with these things, it's important to know you don't want to go too hot, because if you do, what you can get is detonation or pre-detonation, which means essentially when your spark plug's too hot, this ground strap, it can stay cherry red, and it lights the fuel off before it's supposed to, before the spark plug even sparks. So if you go too hot, you can actually damage your motor. If you go too cold, you'll be following these babies a lot, and you'll get real friendly with your spark plug wrench and getting familiar with how to remove them. So look, guys, you can play with these things though, going up one heat range or down another one. All the manufacturers, and they differ a little bit whether the higher the number, the hotter or the colder they get, but you can go at heat range 1 plus or minus and fine tune your combination, especially if you find yourself fouling plugs after a modification. Take a look at what it should have had stock, and then get spark plugs either side of that heat range, +1 or -1, hotter or colder, and play with that. If you have problems either with your spark plugs fouling, or you've added boost or somehow increased that cylinder pressure where you need to make that thing cool down a little bit faster using a colder spark plug. Guys, I hope today's video is helpful and informational for you. It helps you fine-tune your vehicle's application when it comes time to playing around with your spark plug heat ranges. Look, it's one of those tools we have in our tool bag that helps us fine-tune our ride and our engine combination. Guys, until next time, keep the hammer down and keep it between the guardrails.